All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube every Monday and every Friday. Make sure you subscribe. Helps the channel, helps you know when we're putting up new interviews. Also, if you think you can ask better questions of the guests than I can, all you got to do is go down into the description, click on the Patreon link, sign up for that tier, and then you could be asking the next questions. And if you would have signed up, you would have got to ask questions of the great Steve Hunter. You know, the word legend is tossed around all the time, but I promise you, Steve Hunter is an absolute legend. Maybe 50 years in the music business. He has worked with some of the most amazing people. We're going to talk about as many as we can. We'd be here forever if we got into everything, but just to name a few: Alice Cooper, Lou Reed, Peter Gabriel, Aerosmith, Julian Lennon, David Lee Roth. His list goes on and on. He has a brand new single with his project CAZADORA. I'm hoping I said it right. I think I did. It is a cover of a song that he recorded with Julian Lennon called Saltwater. We are going to get into all of that and more with the great Steve Hunter. The Deacon is here right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody out there can waste time with you. All right. Please welcome Steve Hunter.
Hello.
Thank you so much, Steve, for doing this.
No worries. My pleasure.
Yeah, I've been a fan, like many people, of your playing for a long time, and it's really a privilege that I get to speak to you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Steve, first of all, I want to point out that you're joining us from Spain. So maybe we can work backwards. You got to tell me, how do you end up in Spain?
Well, it's sort of a long answer, but no, I can shrink it down a bit for you. Mm-hmm. We were living in Maricopa, Arizona, and Karen and I were sitting and we were discussing the fact that it was difficult for her to see her parents. Her parents were both living here in Spain, and it was very difficult. It's a long flight, it's an expensive flight, and we couldn't always afford to fly her over to see her parents when she wanted to go or when she needed to go. So we talked about it for a long time, and then we decided, well, you know what, we'll take a trip over to Spain and just check it out and see if that would be for us, if moving to Spain would be for us. So we had a flight the flight went from Arizona to New York to Madrid and then down to Alicante, which is where the major airport is. And then we drove over to a place called Calpe. And I got to say, as soon as I landed, I loved it. And we were here about 5 or 6 days. And the whole time we were here, I absolutely loved it. And so on the flight back, we started thinking, well, maybe we ought to move over here. What the hell? You know, her mom and dad were getting up there in years, and my parents are already gone. So I thought, well, you know, she's got to come over and see her parents. She's got to be with her parents, you know. And there was nothing really tying me in any one particular place anymore. I know that may sound weird, you know, but nowadays with so much stuff done online and everything, I've done sessions here for people in New York, you know, so there's nothing really tying you in any one place. And we talked about it and we mulled it over and we decided, yeah, let's move to Spain. So we did. We moved to Spain. We started out in a little town called Altea, which we absolutely loved. We were there for about 2 or 3 years. It's right on the coast, right on the promenade. And then we decided maybe the place we have is a little kind of big and it was a little hard to get upkeep and all that stuff. So we decided, let's shrink down a little bit. And we found this other little town called Albia. And we found a lovely, wonderful, tiny little apartment here in Albia that even though it's small, it just seemed to fit our needs and we're quite comfortable here. So I've kind of grown to really love Spain and I love being here.
Well, I can imagine, you know, great food, probably great weather. I know it's hot today, but.
Yeah, it's a little humid. The weather here in Spain where we are is very similar to Los Angeles. So you'll have periods where it'll be fairly nice without too much humidity, and then all of a sudden you'll have a week of quite high humidity and the high temperature, and that's something that my body's never really liked too much. I grew up in Illinois, and Illinois is it's like that all the time, you know.
Yeah.
And then when we lived in the desert, of course, you know what it's like in Las Vegas. It's
absolutely
110 degrees, but 7% humidity. So, and I can handle that more than I can handle humidity. But that's the only thing. And I think we've kind of learned how to deal with it, as best we can.
Yeah.
That's
well,
all.
Spain is a long way from those Illinois winters.
It is. That's for sure. Thank you. I didn't want any more winters. I was done with winters,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, I'm from New York City originally. I think everyone from the East Coast is done with those winters.
Yeah.
So you're from Decatur, Illinois originally.
Right.
And your dad was a musician. So I'm interested in how you pick it up because, Steve, nowadays these kids go on YouTube or buy a magazine and they know how to play guitar. It wasn't like that back then.
Oh, no. It was most definitely was not like that. My dad asked me if I wanted to take lessons, and I said, sure. My first choice was drums, but I don't think my dad liked that too much. And he kind of said, well, no, it's got to be music, which when I tell drummers that, they absolutely love that. But he meant notes, musical notes, Right. So my second choice was guitar, and I didn't know anything about that there was a lap steel guitar and then there's a regular guitar. I was only 8. So he said, well, good. He found a guy that taught lap steel. So I took lessons for 5 years on lap steel guitar. I absolutely loved it. And before I went to regular guitar, as we call it. But I still used what I learned on lap steel. I used throughout my career.
Oh, it's a specialty for you. I mean, people really, they pay for your lap steel playing. So it came in handy.
It came in real handy. Yeah. Yeah. I think my dad's very happy about that too,
Yeah, it worked. It certainly worked out this many years later. We're still talking about it. So you played in bands in high school, right?
Yeah. Pickup bands and what we call bar bands. I think they call them hobby bands now, which sounds silly to me. I'd rather call them a bar band,
You kind of cut your teeth, though.
Yeah, that's where you learn how to play, And I mean, we've all known the stories about how the Beatles went to Hamburg and, played like 8 hours a day in these strip joints and bars and everything. That's where you learn how to play and become a musician. It's different to learn how to play your instrument, but playing your instrument with 4 other guys or 3 other guys, that you have to do that by actually playing together. And I learned a lot about me being a musician and playing in those bar bands. I really did. Yeah,
you can, people can sit in their homes and play along to records, but the first time you hear live drums behind you, it's a whole new experience. And I think so those bands definitely help you get ready.
Absolutely. Very much so.
In 1967, you're drafted by the U.S. Army to go to Vietnam. Well, you didn't go to Vietnam. It was the Vietnam War, but you went to Japan. You were stationed in Okinawa, right?
Yeah. It was 1968.
Okay.
Is when I was drafted. But yes, I after basic training, I went to X-ray school. Now, mind you, I was drafted, so I had no choice in this. This is what the Army put me there, So I said, okay, I'll be an X-ray tech. And I went to school in San Antonio, Texas. We studied X-ray and anatomy and physiology and all that kind of stuff. And then I finally got through school, and then we went to. They flew me to San Francisco, which was wonderful. To the Presidio. I didn't want to leave there. It was like a country club. It was amazing. But I did on-the-job training there for about 6 weeks, and then I got my orders to fly to Okinawa. And I spent the rest of my last 15 months being an X-ray technician in an aerovac hospital in Okinawa.
How crazy that they decide what you'll be, and it must have been extremely difficult because you're working in a hospital. You're seeing a lot of people coming in injured.
Yeah, and yes, it was difficult. I mean, as anybody who works in a hospital tells you, you learn a professionalism, but it doesn't always hold. You know, there were times when some of the things I saw, it really had an enormous effect on me. And I mean, I saw guys my age, exactly my age, torn to shreds, and for the rest of their lives they're going to be that way, you know. And it really, every once in a while it will hit home, a certain injury or a certain soldier that would come in wounded would just somehow or other would hit me exactly the wrong way, you know, and it would affect me. It still affects me. I can think of a couple of
I can only imagine. You know,
still affects me. Yeah.
And so yeah, and that's part of that time. You're going to carry that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So there was a time that you were thinking about going into the medical field. Now that you have this new training, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I was in high school, I took a lot of sort of pre-med courses. Like I took anatomy, physiology, chemistry, biology, zoology, all the sciences, because and also I took German. German was one of the languages that they kind of recommended. You could also take Latin, of course, but I took German because my grandmother spoke German, so I just picked that one.
Right.
But I had done all these courses to get myself ready for pre-med school, and it just all changed though. You know, things sort of change. You know, sometimes you have no control over how and why they change, and not trying to sound too philosophical, but it was kind of out of my hands. I had entered an amateur music contest while I was in Okinawa for servicemen. It was all servicemen from Navy, Air Force, servicemen and women, and I did this blues tune, and I actually won the contest. And but something happened when I was on stage. When I came on stage and I was introduced, the first couple of rows in the theater were ambulatory wounded from the hospital.
Oh.
They were brought over so they could come see the show if they wanted, and then they all came over. And unfortunately, and this is a whole nother story. We'd have to have another video about this. Most of them were black guys that were wounded, and when they heard that this white boy was going to come out and play blues, they were booing me. And being a white boy with blues, I understood. I mean, I understood it because I'm going to sort of interpret their music. You know what I mean? That's how I saw it in those days. So luckily, I had a black drummer and a black bass player, and I said, "Okay, guys, let's just go. Let's do the best we can, and then we'll go." You know. So we, for some reason or other, we just happened to hit a groove. You know, the three of us, and it was really came off good. At the end of the song, when I ended the song, those same black guys were cheering for us and cheering me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I walked off stage, it just hit me as I was walking off stage. This is what I need to be doing for a living. And it wasn't because so much that I was able to somehow or other miraculously convert these guys. That's not what happened. What happened was that's the original time I saw the communication goes on between a musician and a band on stage and an audience. That was the first time I actually felt it. You don't feel that so much playing in a bar because everybody's there to have fun and drink and party. But this was like a concert. And these guys reacted, and I communicated to those guys, and they communicated back to me. That blew me away. That's when I knew that's what I was going to do for a living. Yeah,
it's that's that they say the language of music, you know, it crosses all barriers.
It does. It does.
And so at this point, you're going to find out Mitch Ryder's looking for a guitar player, and you were going to go to Detroit.
And I did.
Yeah.
I put my guitar in the car and drove to Detroit. And I've told this story a million times, but I get into rehearsal, Of course, I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody there. But set up next to the drummer was a 100-watt Marshall half stack, which I had only seen pictures of. I'd never seen one in person. And that's the amp I was going to use to audition. And I thought, oh my God, I get to play through a 100-watt Marshall. So I plugged my SG in. I turned it up. I didn't turn it up all the way. I turned up to, I don't know, 8, something like that. Turned the knobs a little bit. Hit a big old E chord or A chord, and it was heaven. It was absolute heaven. So I didn't know any of their songs. So Mitch Ryder was there, and Johnny Bedanjic, the drummer, and then John Sauter, my friend, who's the bass player, who actually got me the audition. We were all there, and that's it. That was all that was there in the band. So we decided to jam on some Cream tunes because we all knew them. So we did Crossroads, I think. And I've never heard such heavenly sound out of a Marshall in my life. It was the most amazing thing. I was thinking in my head, you know what? If I don't get this gig, it's okay. I played through a Marshall. So if I have to go back to Decatur, I'm going to have to save up my money for a Marshall. Because this thing just sounds too bloody good. But I ended up getting the gig.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did that for quite some time. And
about a year and a half.
Okay, so not too long. I know at some point now you're going to meet Bob Ezrin, and that's going to become a big bond in your life. He comes into a lot of situations. So tell me how you meet Bob. And Bob Ezrin, if anyone watching doesn't know.
I met him through Mitch Ryder, through the band that I auditioned for in Detroit. Bob was going to be the producer of that album.
Gotcha.
So that's how I met him. And he and I, from that moment on, really got along well. We loved each other's work with music. I loved the way he produced. He loved the way I played. We just ended up doing a whole bunch of stuff together. We're still doing things, after 50 years, we're still doing stuff.
It's incredible. And Bob Ezrin goes on to be one of the, greatest producers of all time. And and you are one of the greatest session guitar players of all time. The secret weapon, well, I can say it for you, but a secret weapon to any great producer is to have somebody like that.
Well, and like I say, Bob and I had a special kind of rapport. I knew that when I went out to do a solo, if he said it was good, I knew it was going to be a good solo. I knew it was good. There's some producers that aren't really sure, but when Bob said, no, that's great, I knew it was great. So we had a real, and I knew he could help get that out of me. That's how we worked together. We worked really great that way.
Yeah, and this is the beginning of you being what we call a session player now, to kind of step in. 1973, you get involved with Alice Cooper, $1 Billion Babies album, one of the great albums of all time. You play a lot of the guitar solos on that, including the song $1 Billion Babies.
Yeah.
We're taking a look at a picture of you. Now, I want to point out that Steve is legally blind, so that's why I'm pointing out that we're looking at a picture of you playing.
Right.
And we're looking at you with the top hat. Yeah. You were wearing the top hat before other famous guitar players were.
Well, there's a big controversy about that, really, because there were some guys from the 60s that wore top hats. Now, I can't think of the guy's name, but there was a British guy that started wearing top hats back in the 60s, mid-60s. We took it up in the Nightmare Tour because we were supposed to look sort of like grave diggers,
Okay.
So we took up the top hat thing, and I got to the point where I really enjoyed wearing them on stage. They were fun to wear. But there have been other people who shall remain nameless who have made that top hat look famous again. And I'm very proud of him for that. He feels like a protege or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not going to say his name because everybody knows who he is.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, but I thought it was a cool look, and he looks good, and he plays great. So I'm quite proud of him.
Yeah, well, and he's also for young people. I think he's their Jimmy Page or their Eric Clapton.
Yeah. Absolutely, he sure is. Yeah. Absolutely.
Which is great that we have that. I don't think anyone would have guessed that in 1987, but
No, probably not. No, you're right.
but
I like his playing too. I think he's an awesome player.
yeah, he's kind of gotten the nod, from the guys before him, which is a good thing to have. So
Yeah.
73 begins a long relationship with Alice Cooper. You've been working with Alice Cooper up until now.
Yeah.
You've toured. You've made 5 albums with Alice.
Yeah, it's 10 now.
Yeah, it might be an outdated bio that I read, but so.
Well, that could be, yeah.
Yeah. So that relationship's gone on for a long time. And of course, the Welcome to My Nightmare tour.
Yeah.
Dick Wagner, who's no longer with us, but a legendary session guy as well. You guys kind of became this team to people. And I think it took a long time for people to realize, because you guys were sort of behind the scenes. Musicians knew Get Hunter and Wagner, but I don't think that other people found out until much later. So tell me about working with Dick.
Well, okay. So the thing is about this 2 guitar thing, you got to understand in the 60s and early into the 70s, there were a lot of bands that had 2 guitar players. That was a fairly common kind of thing, to have 2. And then there wasn't just a lead guitar player and a rhythm guitar player. Both guitar players had to play lead and play rhythm. And that's just the way that's how we all learned how to play guitar in those days. You learned rhythm and soloing.
Right.
Because you needed to do double duty. So Wagner and I came from that same time, where we both could play rhythm and we both could play solo. So that then if we needed to do any double solos, like with harmonies and stuff, we could make it work together. It's like background vocals who can sing well together. It's sort of the same thing. When he and I had to do lines together, since we both came from the same basic era, we knew how to play together. There was this. It wasn't so much a competition as it later became. Mm-hmm. And he could play great rhythm guitar when I solo, and then I love playing rhythm guitar when he soloed. In fact, more often than not, I would prefer playing rhythm guitar than soloing. I mean, soloing's fun, and I love it, of course, but there's nothing like sitting back and falling in with the bass player and the drummer and just groove on a rhythm. That is the most awesome thing in the world to me. Mm-hmm. And but Dick and I were like opposites in a lot of ways, but that's what helped us work well together, I think, because we didn't think alike. So I would think of one thing to play, and he would think of the exact opposite, and it fit like a puzzle. So we never hardly ever had to discuss things. He would play and I would play, and they would just offset each other. That's how we worked together. It was really great. It was I don't think I've had anything quite like that since then.
People should check out the Welcome to My Nightmare tour videos to see you guys playing together and this infamous solo that you guys did. Really great stuff. We're lucky that we can still go back and watch that stuff, because really you get an idea of how great you guys play together. And it's funny how in your career you guys work together on things that you didn't even realize you're both on it. Train Kept It Rolling being a prime example. And I know you've told this story 10 million times. I was managing Jimmy Crespo, who replaced Joe Perry in Aerosmith for a number of years. And he was the first person to tell me, oh, that's Hunter and Wagner. And a lot of people thought that there might have been other Aerosmith songs that you guys played in it, but I think you say it's just the one.
Excuse me. For me, it's just the one. I'm not sure about Dick, though. He may have played on something else. I only played on Train Kept Rolling, though.
So I know you've told it a lot, but take me back to the record plant in 1973, 74, probably 74.
73, I think, in there somewhere. Late 73. I don't know. I don't remember exactly.
Well, it's been a while. You're excused. Yeah. But Bob Ezrin is working on an edit 2-inch tape, and this is a time-consuming process that no longer exists. And you're hanging out. Yeah. And Jack Douglas is working
in the lobby of the record plant, having a cigarette. It's back when I smoked, and I was going to leave Bob alone. It's a tedious thing to put together a 2-inch tape, so I got out of there and left him alone. And right across. The lobby is very small, and right across from where I was sitting was the door to Studio C, which is where Aerosmith were doing some overdubs and stuff, and they were trying to finish the album. I think they were kind of on a deadline, so they were trying to finish the album. And Jack opens the door and pokes his head out, and he sees me sitting there, and he says, "Do you feel like playing?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure. I'd rather play than sit here." So he went into Studio A, which is the big studio where Bob was, and asked him if he could borrow me. And Bob said, "Yeah, I'm going to be here a while." So the record plant had this magnificent amplifier. It was an old Tweed Twin that just sounded magnificently. It was the most beautiful amp I've ever played through. And Jack grabbed that out of Studio A and took it into Studio C and put it in the studio, put a mic on it. Jack was notoriously great at getting great guitar sounds. So I knew the guitar sound was going to be good. So I put on headphones, and he said, "Okay, just, play along." I was actually just kind of warming up as I played through the track. And Jack said, "Well, wow, that's great, but, you're kind of stepping on the vocals." Well, I didn't have the vocals in my headphones. And I told him, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." So he put the vocals in my headphones. And he said, "All right, let's go again." So he hits record, and I just play through the damn thing. And he says, "Yeah, that's great." That was it. That was it. It was like the second take. He was very happy. And I just remember thinking, well, wow, I was just kind of warming up. I was just trying to get the feel right for the song and everything. But see, I think he wanted that edge. I think that edge of the solo, me not knowing for sure where it was going to go, and I just had to fly by the seat of my pants. I think he wanted that in the song, that kind of angst.
And it's supposed to be a live feel.
Well, not really. There's two versions. There's the studio version, which is the one I did.
Right.
And then it segues into a pseudo live version that sounds like it's live, but it's not. Mm-hmm. And in that version, that's Dick Wagner playing.
Right. Yeah. So you're the first half, the intro,
yes.
and then the next part is Dick playing.
Yeah.
Which you didn't know that, though.
As soon as it goes into what sounds like it's live, that's Dick Wagner.
Right. So they bring him in as well. So here's a couple of questions I have. One, does anyone ever speak business with you? Like, okay, I'm going to pay you this, or you're going to get that?
Well, it's kind of funny. I knew Jack. I knew Jack really well. And also he was co-producing with Ray Colcord. Ray Colcord was the keyboard player on the Rock and Roll Animal album and Lou Reed Live album. So I knew Ray really well. So I knew Ray and Jack really well. So I knew they were going to pay me, and then I knew it would be fair. So we never really talked about it. And I remember I got paid pretty fairly. Well, for the day, Remember, this was in the early '70s, so you didn't get like $5,000,
Right.
I got paid. I got paid fine. I was happy with what they paid me.
Yeah, and it helps when it's someone that you're working with, because you're just sitting there, you go and you play something, and I don't think you even know that this is going to become an iconic track.
No. You never think of. I've never ever thought that in my life about any track. You just go in there. You have to focus so much on what you have to do on the track. You never can really think like that. That, to me, that's a kiss of death. I would be so nervous and tense if I thought that way.
You were making history, yeah.
Oh God, that gives me the creeps. I don't know. I never know when you never know when something's going to become this thing. Because it takes on a life of its own once it hits the audience. Because the audience are they're the ones that are going to decide what's iconic or what's historic. It's up to them to decide.
Yeah.
I just go in there and do the best I can, and then let them decide.
Well, fortunately, they've decided on a lot of your work that it's going to be history.
And I'm very grateful, too. I'm very grateful.
For sure. Before we move on from Train Kept to Rolling, so did Jack ever tell you why he didn't have Joe and Brad play?
No, and I didn't really care to know. What I assumed had happened was when I went in the studio, the whole band was there, Joe and Brad and Steven. But first of all, you learn very early on in the professional musician's business stay out of business, stay out of somebody else's business.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really want to know what was going on just in case it was something weird. But what I heard later was I didn't hear it was anything weird other than the fact that they were on a schedule. They were behind schedule. The label was getting a little nervous. They wanted them to get it done. And this was one that they were having a trouble getting a handle on. So Jack just said, let's call somebody in and see if we can get this thing. And I think that's, to me, that's all I've ever heard that happened. I never heard of any other reason for it happening. And even that, I'm not sure that was it. That's what I heard, you know.
Yeah, I've heard that, and he might say in his book that Joe Perry was disappointed that he didn't get to play that.
Yeah, I've never read. I stay out of it.
No, you did your job. That's why
I went in there and played, had a ball, played guitar, and hopefully I did what they wanted, and then I went on to something else. You know, I didn't want to try to get involved in any of the other stuff. You know, I've never been that way. I kind of want to stay out of that. You know,
that's why you work so much. That's why you were the guy.
I stay out of trouble. I can tell you that. Nobody's threatening my ass, you know. So
yeah, I get it. So here's my last question about this. So you and Dick are on this track, and it's kind of kept silent. You guys aren't credited, and it didn't come out to much later that you guys are. Although there was always rumors, you know, this is before the internet that this is coming out. I'm wondering, are there any other tracks that we don't know about that you and Dick played on?
Well, I can't ever think of any that of course on $1 Billion Babies I played there. I wasn't credited on that either. Neither was Dick. In fact, there were Rick Derringer I think played on that, and he wasn't credited either. We got a little special thanks. But you know, there was a weird political thing going on in the 70s with labels. Labels were getting a little irritated about signing a band, taking them into the studio to do an album, and then finding out they've hired a bunch of session players to play on the album. Mm-hmm. They started thinking, well, why did I sign the damn band then? You know, if they can't do it, they got. But you know, that's not what was going on. It wasn't like the band couldn't play the stuff. It was more like, well, for example, with an album like $1 Billion Babies. I think Alice and Bob, and even the band, wanted a lot of color, a lot of different colors on that album. There's all kinds of Liza Minnelli's on that album, you know.
Right.
And I mean, they're all it's the color, it's the coloration you want to add to an album, so that it's not it has it's multidimensional, and I think there were a lot of bands that wanted to do that, whatever it took, you know. Especially this is a critical album for an album, the $1 Billion Babies album, and it did so well. The songs were magnificent. There's some great songs on that album, and I thought Bob did a fabulous job. I thought the Alice Cooper group did an amazing job, and all the people that I heard about later that were associated with it just made a magnificent piece of record, you know. The thing is, the record is cut in stone. So you got to make it as good as you can make it, because it's going to be heard over and over and over and over and over again. When you go to a live show, that's different. That's an environmental thing. You're feeling the moment, the night, mm-hmm. the moment. And it can be different every night, and that's what makes it fun. That's what makes going to a live show fun. But a record, when it's cut in stone, you got to make damn sure that you can listen to that thing 1,000 times and it still sounds good to you. And
for sure.
That's a challenge. You know, that's a real challenge.
And that also might have been we're looking at some pictures of you with Alice. That also might have been a difficult time because that Alice Cooper group was sort of coming to an end. And
again, I have to say, I don't know anything about that. I kept my nose out of that. I love those guys. Those guys are still friends of mine. And I didn't know what was going on. All I know is that after the $1 Billion Babies album came out, and it did so well, it was a monstrous album. I had done a few other things, and then the next thing I know, I get a call from Bob Ezrin saying, "You want to come to Toronto and record an Alice Cooper album?" And I said, "Sure." I didn't know that it was just going to be Alice Vincent Furnier, who later became Alice Cooper. I didn't know anything about all that stuff. And then when I got there to work on it, I didn't want to know anything else about it. This is just, it's like none of my business, for one thing. And whatever it is it's they've got to work it out amongst themselves. I don't need to stick my nose in it, and I don't want to. You know, I've never done that with any band I've ever worked with. I've never wanted to know anything except the music. You get me in the room, give me a set of headphones, set me up, and let's make the music. I don't care about the other stuff. It's the same way when I go out on the road. I don't give a damn what you're doing off stage. None of my business. What I care about is how you work on stage. That's all that matters to me, and I hope that's all anybody cares about me. They don't care about off stage, just what I do on stage, you know.
Well, again, I think that's one of the secrets to your success. Besides being an incredible musician, you come in, get the job done, and stay out of drama, which is I'm sure nice for everybody.
Listen, man. The only thing I care about is the music. I don't care about anything else. Yeah. I only care about the music. And what happens, especially on stage. Do we have fun on stage? And I'm telling you, with Alice Cooper on the Nightmare Tour, I had fun every single night. It was a blast. Couldn't wait to get on stage. And that's it for me. That's all I ask.
Yeah, for sure. And but so I'm sure there's a million solos that you've played that you probably don't even remember that ended up on records. I'm surprised Bob didn't bring you in for Kiss. Kiss was infamous for needing other guys to play when people weren't around.
Well, no, I think he did bring Dick Wagner in.
Yeah, I think he put Dick in also. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what album he did. Well, you know, but that's the way it goes. You know, he knows what he wants and how to get it and who to use to get it. So he may have had something else, an idea that didn't have anything to do with me. That's all right. He's done a lot of albums that didn't have anything to do with me. So,
right.
You know what I mean? So I never thought anything of it. I thought, okay, well, he's you know, in fact, I didn't even find out about Bob doing Kiss until later, until the album came out. And I thought, well, cool, I didn't know Bob did a Kiss album. You know, it's just, I don't know, none of that stuff ever bothers me.
Yeah, no, you're definitely laid back. We're looking at a picture of you with Lou Reed right now. This is a later picture, but you have had some career with him, starting with the album Berlin, and some amazing musicians on this album. Jack Bruce, who you'll work with on his solo album. Again, Dick Wagner, Ainsley Dunbar. I mean, how amazing. And then you'll tour with Lou, and the famous intro to Sweet Jane on the live album. You talked about it earlier, Rock and Roll Animal. That version of the song has become so popular, and that was your part. Tell me a little bit about Lou Reed.
Well, all I ever think about when I think of Lou Reed is that he was a genius. He was a street poet genius, but he also wrote some amazing songs. I really grew to love him as a brother. We didn't talk a whole lot on the first tour, which was in 73. 73 was a busy year for me.
Oh, yeah, I've noticed.
we didn't talk too much, not for any particular reason. He's quiet, I'm quiet, usually, especially on the road. So we just never talked. We both had this beautiful respect, I think, for each other, but we just never talked much. Now, many, many years later, when I started touring with him again, somewhere around 2004 or something like that, for some reason, when we did the Berlin thing, for some reason or other, we hit it off in a whole different way than we did before. Suddenly, he and I were talking and kibitzing and laughing and carrying on like brothers, you know? And it was so wonderful, man. I really loved the time I spent with Lou. We did the Berlin album live, which I'm sure you probably read about, but we did the entire album live, start to finish, all the way through, in order. And which is something I always wanted to do. I always thought that album was, to me, that album is one of the most artistically genius albums ever. The lyrics, the melodies, and the way Bob produced it, I think it's one of the most brilliant albums I was lucky enough to play on. And then when we got to do it live, liked the album, I was thrilled to the bone, and I really, really loved doing that. But for some reason or other, Lou and I just hit it off. And there are a lot of wonderful pictures of he and I smiling at each other on stage.
Yes, I saw a lot, and we'll share some of those here.
Yes, really, it was so cool, man. I had such a great time with him.
And he was a very private guy. You know, this was a guy who kind of stayed out of it. So I don't think everyone really got a grasp on his personality. So for you to have that song,
I think that's one of the reasons I liked him, is because he,
yeah,
you know, he stayed out like I did. I didn't. I stayed out too, but yeah, when you get to know him like I did, you find out he has a remarkable sense of humor. He's really funny. And but he's also a lyric genius. Some of the lyrics he's written for some of the songs that we did. I got working with him over the last few years. I got to do a big load of songs of his that I had never played before, like that were on. He had an album called The Raven, I think, and we did a few songs off of that. We did like Dirty Boulevard and all these songs that I'd never heard of. So I got to learn other Lou Reed songs, and it was a real blast to play them. And then I get to hear these lyrics. If you ever want to go back and rediscover Lou, try to listen to the lyrics. Try to focus on the lyrics, and you'll be blown away by the stories. And it's street poetry. It's just magnificent stuff. And
yeah.
if you really want a lesson in artistic lyrics, listen to Berlin from start to finish.
Yeah, that's everybody's homework. Steve's giving you guys your homework, and
that's my homework. Yes,
and it's worth it.
And there will be, by the way.
Yeah, there'll be a quiz. Yeah, I would see Lou Reed walk around New York all the time as a kid, and I would just look. And most people didn't recognize him. He just went about his life. He was very, like you said, private. But I would tell people, I would think, this guy is an actual legend that you're seeing, and he just blends in with New Yorkers and stays to himself. They're very interesting guy.
Yeah, I loved him.
Yeah, and so Jack Bruce's solo record, Out of the Storm, what an amazing experience. I mean, you work with such great people.
Well, yeah, I got to work with one of my favorite band members, which is Cream. Cream was one of my favorite bands in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And I met Jack on the Berlin album, and I absolutely loved playing with him. So to get to do his solo album was really a blast. Really a blast. He's a great guy and a genius. He's a genius bass player, as you well know.
Yeah. So we're jumping around. We're going to put up a picture right now of you with Peter Gabriel. This is 1977, I believe, which is a crazy year for music. I mean, what a year. Everybody had something going on. The punk movement's coming in. And this is his first solo record. I know you said you weren't really a Genesis fan, so I don't think you exactly knew what to expect.
No, I really wasn't. I mean, I hadn't really heard. I think I heard one track, and I mean, I thought it was cool, but it seemed a bit fusiony or prog rock or something. And in those days, now you got to remember, this is the 70s for me, and I was dead into blues rock. That was what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of thing was a little tough for me to. I could appreciate it, but I mean, I wouldn't put a record on and listen all day like I would blues.
Right.
But when I met Peter and I heard the first song, I thought, this is going to be an experience. This is going to be an amazing experience, and it was. Peter's another genius, but he's another one that I don't have to tell anybody is a genius. All you have to do is look at his history, and you can tell he's a genius. You don't need me to tell you, you know.
And you tour with him, and Robert Fripp also on guitar. What a crazy experience.
Oh, that was wonderful. I love Robert. Robert's another one that's got a great sense of humor. Very, very dry English sense of humor, but he's also a brilliant player. So it's one of those. Listen, man, the thing I like most about what I got to do was I got to play with some incredible players. You know, I got to play with some players that just blew me away. And for in that Berlin album to sit across from Jack Bruce, to playing guitar, sitting across Jack Bruce, watching him play bass. That was like rock and roll heaven, you know. That was only my second record.
Right.
And here I am, and then looking over the next day, and there's Stevie Winwood on B3. I was just, that's what made me really want to do this, is to play with all these great players, because man, they just, all they do is make you play your best, and you learn things from them, and they force you to, you know, either do it or get off the pot kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I really appreciated that, because I loved being inspired by guys like that. So Robert Fripp was one of the ones, you know, he's one of the other ones that was an inspiration to play with.
Yeah, and Salisbury Hill becomes a big part of your career, obviously, and for Peter as well. And people can check out, you know, live versions of that too. We're, like I said, we're fortunate to have all of this. So I'm a little bit younger. So my first exposure to you, Steve, although I heard all your music and just didn't know it was you, is David Lee Roth. Yeah. So come 1990 or 91, David Lee Roth is looking for a blues guitar player to teach Jason Becker. And I want to point out for people who might not be familiar with Jason Becker, he was on Shrapnel Records. He was this instrumental kid. He had a band Cacophony with Marty Friedman. He was the up-and-coming young heavy metal shredder, probably started as a teen. And he was going to step in after, well, Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai, and then next was going to be Jason Becker. David Lee Roth wanted somebody to teach him blues, and you take it from there.
Well, that's what happened. I got the call to give Jason some blues lessons. Somebody sent over the Cacophony album, and I put it on and listened to it, and I thought, man, this guy, he's not going to want anything that I got, you know. Listen to the way he plays. He doesn't need anything from me, you know what I'm saying? And I wasn't being sarcastic. I just thought, this guy is so far above anything I can do that I don't know if I'm going to be much help. But he comes over, and within 5 minutes, you know, we just hit it off. And I remember David just wanted him to learn some blues feel and things like that. So when Jason came over, I asked him, I said, well, who's your favorite guitar? Who are you listening to nowadays? And he said Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I thought, oh my God, we're already on the same page.
Yeah,
if that's true. And I said, well, okay, that's great. How would you like to hear where Stevie Ray got a lot of the stuff he does? And he said, well, yeah, you know, I'd love to. So I put on an Albert King album. It's one called Years Gone By. It's one of my favorite Albert King albums. And you can hear the connection between Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert King. They were, Stevie loved his playing, and you can hear it. You can hear Albert King in a lot of Stevie's playing. And I was a huge fan of Stevie. I still am. I still like to go back and hear stuff he's done. And from that moment on, I gave him the album and let him take it home and just listen to it. And, you know, Jason's one of those guys, you don't really teach him anything. You just show him stuff, and then he just absorbs it. He's like a walking sponge. So you don't really have to belabor anything. You know, you just, I learned a lot from listening to records. And he's one of those guys that could just listen to something and absorb the feel and all that stuff. It all comes in. And it's really wonderful. He was a great student, and we turned out to be really good friends. I'm still in touch with him.
Well, yeah, and so, and we'll definitely get to that. So at what point does David Lee Roth sort of tell you that he wants you to play on the record as well?
Well, he called me one night and asked me if I would like to write some songs with Brett Tuggle. Brett Tuggle's an old friend of mine. I met him in the Detroit band. And I said, yeah.
Keyboard player, yeah.
Yeah, keyboard player. He plays guitar too. So I said, well, yeah, I'd love to write with Tuggle. So I went out to Tuggle's house a few nights, and we wrote some songs. And David loved them. I think he ended up using 4 of them. And after he had heard the songs and he worked on them and worked out his vocals and stuff, he called me one night and asked me if I wanted to play on the album. And I said, absolutely. He said, you want to play rhythm guitar on the album? I said, absolutely. I love playing rhythm guitar. So Next thing I know, I'm on my way to Vancouver to start work on the David Lee Roth album.
Now, you're not a big gossiper type, but you got to tell me what David Lee Roth was like, at least.
Well, I can't tell you that because he's just David Lee Roth. I mean, listen, it's the kind of question I would never answer. Mm. David Lee Roth is the lead singer, and I loved him. One of the things about him that I didn't know, I got in his Winnebago. He had a Winnebago up in Vancouver that would drive to the studio, and I'm sitting up in the passenger's chair in the, you know how they have the great big captain's chairs and stuff, and I'm sitting in there, and on the console there's a great big box of cassettes, and so I start looking through the cassettes, and they're all blues. It's all blues, and I'm not talking about, you know, like kind of blues. I'm talking about Muddy Waters and Albert King, B.B. King, Elmore James, Lightning Hopkins. All those guys were all in there. So, wow, man, I can't believe Dave listens to blues. So I asked him, he said, oh, no, man, the blues, that's it for me. I said, well, it's it for me too, man. So there was a couple times we kind of jammed on blues, and it was absolutely terrific. But no, Dave's a great guy. I didn't have any trouble with it. Lucky thing about working in the studio with somebody like Dave is that he knows what he wants, and he knows how to get it and make it fun. And that's what we did. Recording that album up in Vancouver was an absolute blast. Bob Rock was terrific producer.
Yeah, Bob Rock.
and I had a great time. I had a great time up there playing these great songs, playing with Jason and Greg Bissonette and Matt Bissonette and Tuggle.
Yeah, I think the record's a little underrated. It came out really at the grunge Nirvana prime.
Yeah, it
and did. It didn't. But some of the songs that tell the truth, and some of these 40 Below, some of these songs that really show you off as well, that you wrote, you know, co-wrote. I think if people go back and revisit that record now with a fresh slate, I think they would really enjoy it. Tragically, while making this record, you're sharing a place with Jason in Canada, and you noticed that something's wrong. Just tell me a little bit about what happened.
Well, I didn't notice it then. I noticed it before then. He came over to my apartment in Hollywood one night to take a lesson, and he kind of tripped a little bit coming in my door, and I said, well, "What's the matter, man? What are you tripping? What are you doing that for? What's the matter?" I said, "What'd you do? Stub your toe?" He said, "No, man." I said, "Well, what's causing you to limp like that?" And he said, "Well, we don't know." And I said, "Well, man, you got to get that checked." He said, "Yeah, I got to go see a couple doctors this week to find out what's going on." So I never thought much about it, except that the little bit of medical knowledge that I got while I was in the Army made me really worried that it was something neurological, you know, that guy was only 20 years old, and here he is, he's having trouble walking. That didn't sound right.
Yeah.
So we found out later, of course, he was diagnosed with ALS. And that's when I found out, you know.
Yeah, Jason was having troubles with his hands as well when playing that record, and that's when we find out he has ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Was he able to complete all the guitar tracks on that record?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
He never really had any major guitar trouble until the album was finished. He played all those solos. He played all that stuff.
Yeah, because there's always rumors out there. You know, some people say, "Oh, he played on this."
No. There's a lot of crap out there. That's why I said I'm trying to stay out of it.
Well, in this case, it's good though because you are the source and you can clear that up.
Well, I just know that I know his playing, and I know that's him playing on the album. And I was there when he did some of it. Yeah. And he was playing fine. It's just what he was noticing was his fingers were getting a little bit weaker. And I don't know, it was several months after that album was done that he was really starting to have trouble with them. But it was long after the album was done.
Yeah, so he was unable to tour, obviously. No. They bring in Joe Holmes to play guitar. Was there ever any talk of you touring at all, or that wasn't what you were going to do?
Well, There was talk of it a little bit, but I don't think Dave. I don't think really Dave thought of me as a touring musician. I think he, excuse me, I think he thought of me more as the studio guy.
Mhm.
Probably maybe because I was older, and maybe it was because he already had somebody else in mind. I don't know. It didn't matter to me because I've been on both sides of that where I didn't play on the album but I toured, or I did play on the album but I didn't tour. That happens all the time. So I never really thought much about it.
Yeah, he probably thought I'll put in a young kid, guitar
think,
hero.
and I think in his situation, I think that's what he should have done.
Right.
I would have done the same thing. Yeah.
So all these years later, you're still your friendship with Jason has lasted. So and there's a great documentary about Jason's life and that you're involved with as well. And so Jason communicates with his eyes. His father developed a system, and he can blink, and they can get letters, and he can communicate, and he can also. I don't know about now, but he was able to make music through a computer. And on one of your solo albums, which is an amazing album and an amazing lineup of talent, you got, Johnny Depp, and I mean, everybody famous is on this album. But Jason actually was able to write a song that you recorded.
He wrote a little piece that I really liked. And I said, can I have that? Can I use that on the album? And he said, sure. So I brought it in and I edited it a little bit, manipulated it, made it a little bit longer. And it's one of my favorite pieces on the album, So he had a whole bunch of pieces, and that's one I picked to use.
Yeah, and what a great tribute, and what something so special for him that many years after he's been diagnosed and unable to play. I think also the very touching video of you visiting with Jason. You go and play his guitars, and you spend time with the family.
Yeah,
and,
I love
it's a bond. His family, it's a big bond to this day, and I think it's very touching to see that you've continued that friendship. And it's amazing that Jason is still, it's here. He still has that. So just one other part of your career. Now we're missing a lot of people. It's fun. You've worked with Tracy Chapman, but I want to talk a little bit about Julian Lennon. Because the song that we are talking about, it's available everywhere right now. So that's the first thing.
It's a Spanish word. It's CAZADORA. And what it means is huntress. So to say the huntress, it would be, La CAZADORA? Mm-hmm. And a hunter, the male, like me, it's El Cazador, which is the hunter. So we liked that. We thought, since we got the girls are singing, let's call it huntress. So the word is Spanish for huntress, cazadora.
So I want to point out
Did I say it right? Yeah. Okay.
I want to point out that your wife, Karen, sings on the track, but you guys discovered another voice, a young woman, and it's an amazing story. So if you don't mind tell me how you discovered her.
No, I don't mind telling you that at all. That's why I'm here, buddy. So here's what happened. Karen was out we used to live on the promenade in Altea, right on the beach. And of course, the promenade, there were always, the English call it busking, which is where people sing and play guitars and stuff for spare change, like they do in Grand Central Station or any, you know what I mean, or subway station.
Absolutely.
So they do it on the promenade. So Karen's out on the balcony, and I'm in the living room, and she comes in the room. She says, "Steve, you got to come out here and hear this girl singer." So I went out on the balcony, and this girl, this very beautiful Spanish girl, she's about in her 20s, late 20s, singing an American standard, but singing it with all the maturity of a woman twice her age, and just this beautiful voice. So I said, this girl's great. So Karen went downstairs and met her, and they talked and stuff, and we stayed in touch. So I was going to do this arrangement of Saltwater, which is a song that's off of a Julian Lennon album called Help Yourself, that I actually got to play some guitars on. And on this song, on Julian's album, I played lap steel. I played a lap steel solo.
And Steve, can you also tell me how you ended up playing the guitar? Because I believe that they wanted George Harrison or they wanted Eric Clapton, right?
Yeah, what I had heard him, I didn't get all the information on that either. I sort of got just bits and pieces. But what I understand that they sent the track to George Harrison to do a slide solo on. And when it came back, for some reason, they really liked the first half the solo, but then the second half the solo, Julian Lennon had written the solo, and they liked the second half. So what I ended up doing is learning both of them, put them together as one solo.
Gotcha. And I believe at this time, Eric Clapton's his son had passed away. This is, I believe, right around that time. So I don't think he was available. I believe that's the story of that.
That could be. I don't know. I didn't even know Eric had been asked. All I knew about was George. But there again, it was like, I like him to keep me out of the loop. I don't want to know.
Yeah. I'm here to give the gossip. You're here to do the playing. I get it. But so you play that amazing solo, and it's a beautiful song. And I have to say, I've heard your new arrangement with Karen and May, and what a beautiful song. It really creates a vibe. I mean, I urge people to listen to it it's hard to describe something like this.
Well, I had a difficult time trying to come up with an arrangement because I really loved the original arrangement so much. I mean, Bob Ezrin produced it, of course, and he had done such a beautiful job in the arrangement and the production that I was finding it difficult to come up with something different because I liked that one so much. So it took me some time. It took me several months. I just had to leave alone for a while, and I finally started kind of getting a handle on an arrangement. But May really helped when I started thinking of, well, I know what, I'll have Karen sing a verse and May sing a verse and have them sing together, do it as a duet. That made the whole arrangement come together for me it came together much quicker that way. So once I got the basic track all done, then we went into the studio. I have a friend in Altea has a studio. And we went in and recorded the vocals, and I was very happy with the way it came out.
It's also, we should mention, it's also bilingual. It's also bilingual. It
is most definitely. The second verse done in Spanish.
Yeah, and very beautiful. It's even if you don't speak any Spanish, it really works for this song. And Julian heard it, right?
Yeah, he heard it. He thought it sounded lovely, and there's no better guy to hear it and say that to for me than Julian. To know that he really loved it, that really made that was so important to me that he liked it. Bob Ezrin liked it too, which was another plus for me. We were worried that that's a scary thing to play to play a song to the guy who wrote it. He co-wrote, and he had a couple other writers with him, and it was on his album. I was really nervous, but he really loved it, and so did Bob Ezrin. So I felt really good about that. So I'm really glad and really proud to be putting it out.
So this interview is coming out the day that the song is available everywhere, so people can find it on their streaming services. It's super easy to find, and I'll have the spelling and the link in the description, so it's easy for everyone to find Saltwater. So I was asking you, and you can tell us, is this just a one-time thing, or do you think because this is a single, do you think we'll get a full album?
Well, I'm hoping that we can do more. I don't know yet if that's going to happen. Like I said to you, I'm working on a second song right now. It's taken me a little time because I've had some tech issues here. I've just put in a new piece of gear that's making everything sound much better. But I've had some tech issues getting it to everybody to talk to each other and get it to work. So it's a little slower than I was hoping. But I hope to have this new song done soon, and that's going to have May and Karen on it too. So I don't know. I mean, if possible, I'd certainly like to do more with them because I think their voices sound fabulous together.
Absolutely. Well, we all need to go listen to it. It's that easy.
Yeah.
We follow the link and listen to it and like it, and then share it and tell our friends. And that's the way we get things going. Steve, I always say it's like the 50s now where you put out a single. The day of just putting out a record is kind of over. You put out a single, and then you put out another single. You have enough singles, now you got a record. So
yeah, I think so. You know, I think that's the way it is. I think we didn't know what to do, really. I mean, it just, the music business has flip-flopped all over the place. We don't know what it is anymore. So we just said, Karen and I just said, let's put it out as a single, and to hell with it, see what happens. Hopefully there will be a lot of people that will find some joy in the song. That's really what we're hoping for.
Well, and I think, you know, any real artist would say that you make music because you're passionate about it. You know, thy known self be true. If other people like it, that's great. It helps that it's successful. But you did it for you, you know, you and Karen. This is your passion project.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you still enjoy, Steve? Do you still enjoy just playing guitar around the house?
Yeah, I don't do it as much as I used to, but I do. I mean, it's so hard not to pick up a guitar once in a while and make some noodly noises on it. I love it. It's been with me since I was 8, so it's kind of one of those things that's hard. Sometimes I put it down for a couple of weeks just to leave it alone for a while, and then when I go back to it, a lot of times new stuff comes out. So I don't play it all the time, but it's hard not to grab. I got some great sounding guitars here, so it's hard to leave them alone.
I can imagine. But think about how many chords and how many notes you've played in your life.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
It's a lot. Steve, does your vision, you know, you have glaucoma, you've been dealing with that for your vision. Yeah. Does it impair your playing at all? Is it harder?
Yeah, it is harder. I know that there are blind guys that play all the time, but a lot of times it's easier if you learn how to play as you're blind. I learned how to play by, you know, sight, hand sort of stuff, and as my eyesight deteriorates, it makes it a little more difficult for me to play. What happens is I just get disoriented with the blind spots. I can't always tell exactly what fret I'm on unless I'm very careful. So it has taken some of the fun out of playing live. It's very difficult for me to play live now, but I can still play in the studio because I can always start and stop again. I can't do that live. So yeah, it's a little bit cumbersome, but
yeah, I can imagine.
You just find ways of dealing with it. Like most people will tell you, you just find ways to deal with it.
Yeah, and like you said, I think a lot of the guitar players who were born blind. Someone like Jeff Healey never saw. He figured out his different style of playing based on his ear. You know.
Yeah, and he was a badass player.
Yeah, so he was really something.
It didn't hinder him at all.
No, in fact, he came up with things that no one else would have thought of.
Absolutely.
But it is great that, you know, you are able to do things in the studio, and people were so fortunate to see you. You know, when I first heard you were moving to Spain, I was like, oh man, we're not going to get to see Steve play live again. You know.
Yeah. Well, that wouldn't be the reason. The reason is just being my eyesight being a problem. Yeah. I mean, I could still play live being in Spain, but the last time I played live, it was really, really getting difficult. So.
Yeah, you did a tour with Alice. Was your eyes? Yeah. That was kind of the beginning of the eye problem, right?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't beginning, but that was the time it told me that, you know, you're having a very difficult time playing live, a really hard time, and getting on and off stage. Karen had to like lead me around everywhere. You know, it's terrible. I mean, that's okay, but she can't lead my fingers around on the fretboard.
Right.
You know, so. It was just getting very nerve-wracking. I wasn't enjoying playing live because I was having to concentrate so much on where I was on the fretboard so that I didn't mess up. I mean, I didn't want to go up on stage with, you know, 30,000 people out there and just screw up. That's not my job. My job is to go up there and entertain people and make great music and make good music as I could. I couldn't do that with the way my eyes are. So it put me off.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, you know, Steve, being at home in Spain and making music with your wife, it seems like a pretty nice thing to have in these years of your life.
Yeah, I got no problem with that.
And you have left such a legacy that you continue to build on. That's what's so great. How many people can say 50 years of recorded music, some of it the most iconic songs that are around, and that you still get to make music and you still get to play and do what you love. And it's just, you know, it's a testimony to your work ethic, I think.
Well, maybe so. And I got most of that from my father. you know, and also the fact that the technology has come to the point where I can have a studio in my home that I can make music with. I mean, that's you know, as much as I complain about technology and as much as I miss tape, you know, and a great big 96 input console and all that stuff, and I miss the smell of 2-inch tape, it is really nice to be able to go into a kind of a small room and turn on my computer and make something that sounds like saltwater.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
feels really good to be able to do that.
And it's got to be a bit shocking to someone like you who spent your life in studios to then go, oh, wait a second, I do this on a laptop now?
Yeah, yeah. But, you know, it's nice, though, because I loved recording. One of the first time I got into a studio and recorded, I absolutely loved it. And I wanted to know everything I could about what made it work. What's that? What's a compressor? What's an EQ? I wanted to know everything. And I always, from that point on, always wanted to have my own studio. And all through my career, I've had everything from Porta studios to 8-track studios. And when the technology started developing, when the ADATs came along and things like that, and the TIAC had some wonderful digital recorders, when all this technology started coming, I was really getting excited, because then I could see, well, you know what, having my own studio may very well be a reality soon. And as soon as I could do it, I got something. You know,
it takes a special type of person, because you have to be very patient to do these things and learn these things. And so you've had that, you know, you took a liking to it, had that ability, and now here you are, constantly adapting.
Yeah, and constantly learning. I'm always learning stuff about it. You know, I'll think, oh my God, I really got this Pro Tools down, and then some 12-year-old kid will come along and you know you can do this, and then oh God, I never even thought of that. You know, so it's a good. I'm not just Pro Tools, but Logic and all the other ones that are out there. There's so much you can do with most of them now. They're so wonderful that, I mean, editing alone has become so much easier to do in the digital world than ever was in the tape world. It was before.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And like you said, you're able to do things on your own. One guy can send this in, you can send that in. Next thing you know, you have it. And especially in these modern times, that is a nice situation to have.
Yeah, yeah.
Steve, I can't thank you enough. I do this every day. I talk to somebody. It's really an honor to talk to someone like you. And your music's been a part of my life, and so many people watching, I know. And so we gotta get more. So we want everyone to go to the link in the description and listen to it. You know, nowadays it's free. It's not so difficult. Push a button and you're going to hear new music. Saltwater, I promise you, this is a beautiful song. You guys did a great job, and I look forward to more of it. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you, man. Thanks very much.